Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida podcast. In this show, we talk to leaders in the community, leaders of clubs, and interesting folks who live here in the Villages, to give perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast.
How can you support our podcast? This is Mike Roth, and listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project for you. This podcast brings me joy, brings you knowledge, inspiration, and a lot of things that people need to know about the Villages and the people that are living here and what's actually going on. Creating this podcast is a labor of love, even though it demands more time than I can easily spare. But hey, time isn't something we can buy back, right? Now, here's where you come in, the unsung heroes and heroines. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. There are two simple ways that you can support us. The first is a small monthly donation. Visit our podcast website, openforum.com, and click on the black supporter box. Even a small $3 to $10 a month donation makes a difference. And guess what? You can cancel anytime, no strings attached. The second way that you can contribute to the podcast is by making a purchase of an Amazon product at Amazon standard prices, and we are paid a small commission on each purchase as an Amazon affiliate. That way there's no extra money out of your pocket, but you are supporting the podcast. Check every week because we're going to be adding new Amazon products that you can buy and support the podcast with. Thank you. And your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on. This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. Today I'm speaking with Christian Sloop with the Lakeridge Winery and Vineyards. Thanks for joining me, Christian.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike. I appreciate it.
Christian, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the history of the brand and family, the story of Lakeridge?
Yes, sir. Yeah, thanks again, Mike. I'll begin with a background of myself. So I actually grew up in Colorado, lived there till I was 18, and I went to school to a small private school and just outside of Omaha, Nebraska. I played collegiate tennis there on a scholarship. I majored in accounting there, and I worked in public accounting for about 3 years in Omaha before kind of making the decision to come down and work at the winery roughly 2 years ago. So to give a background of the winery that we've got at Lakeridge Winery and Vineyards here in Clermont, Florida, is my granddad actually started this roughly 45 years ago. So he started it with 5 acres of vineyards that he actually had planted in his backyard. So that was the test vineyard for what was to come and what is now the 2 largest wineries in the state that we now own. But to go back to that, he started with those 5 acres. My uncle, who's now the second generation, he's the president of the company, helped him put those 5 acres of vineyards in on his plot of land there in Tallahassee. They actually had their first winery up in Tallahassee. It was called Lafayette Vineyards. This was about 42 years ago. They had quickly realized that there wasn't as many tourists and as many people in that surrounding area to come and visit the winery and buy the wine as there potentially was down in Orlando. This was when Disney was gaining all of its steam and just really becoming something that was large. So timing, they came down to Clermont where there was actually all those orange freezes in the 80s. So he was able to secure a really beautiful piece of land on top of one of the biggest rolling hills in Clermont. It's 127 acres. He purchased that back in 1988, and they quickly erected the original building that is still existing there at the winery and there in Clermont. They also had started planting the vineyards out there, which have now grown to 70 acres of planted vineyards. The whole piece of property is 127 acres. We have added on to the building a couple of times to accommodate the increased storage that we need, the increased tank storage that we need, as well as increased retail room space for the amount of visitors that we're having per year. They opened the doors in 1989. We just celebrated our 35th anniversary back in February of this year, which was a big milestone. From there, my uncle had came down after he was at Auburn University, and he took over Lakeridge. In 1996, we purchased another winery and a building in St. Augustine, which is now San Sebastian, which is our sister winery. That is now the second largest winery in the state. Lakeridge Winery is the largest winery in the state. He now owns and pretty much operates that one. And now I have taken over as the chief operating officer at Lakeridge Winery Vineyards in the past couple of months, and I'm running that operation. So it's the third generation now, and hopefully getting better and better throughout the generations.
You grow grapes at both locations?
We only grow grapes here at the Lakeridge location here in Claremont, Florida. We've got 70 acres of planted vineyards, but we also have 450 acres that we own up in the Panhandle, just north of Panama City Beach, where we grow a majority of our grapes. They've got much better soil up there. San Sebastian is a standalone location, but they do have a restaurant upstairs, and we've got some future developments that are in the works for that location as well. But a very touristy area. St. Augustine in general is just an amazing place. That's the birthplace of wine. To give you a quick tidbit of history, that's actually where the first wines were produced in America, were in St. Augustine when they came over from Spain back in the 1560s. And the first wines were actually made from the muscadine grapes, which is what we're still making our wines with to this day. So far before anything was done in Napa Valley and anything else like that. So we're very proud to be back in St. Augustine, to be at that birthplace of the American wine. So it's a really cool spot as well.
The daily activities that you offer at the winery in Lakeridge and in St. Augustine.
Yeah, so very similar as to what we offer. We're doing free tours, so complimentary tours and tastings 7 days a week. We're open 10 to, here at Lakeridge Winery, we're here 10 to 5 p.m. And then on Sundays, it's 11 to 5. But we offer complimentary tours and tastings. There's no reservation required. People are just can come into the winery and walk in. Well, once we get a couple of people, they'll go up and watch the video to first start. And it's a background of the winery and how it started. It's about a 12-minute video. Then they'll go on a catwalk and see the bottling line. And then they'll go back and see where we're actually processing the grapes. Obviously, we're only doing that one time of the year, but they'll be able to see the equipment and then ultimately come down and they'll do a tour or an actual tasting, and take two. And they'll come down and do an actual tasting at the counter. They'll do a tasting of probably 8 wines, which kind of varies depending on what we're offering and what is in season and what we're doing. So during the summer months, we'll offer something that's a little bit better chilled. The Cabernets and whatnot might be a little bit warm during the summer months that we experience here in Central Florida, but we'll adapt to that, but give our guests a really great experience and something that's complimentary. There's no pressure to buy anything. Obviously, that's the end goal, is they would love the wine and walk out with a case or two, but really having the experience to come out and do something that's complimentary is hard to find these days. So we're proud to stand by that and stand by our product that we're willing to offer it on a complimentary basis.
So what month of the year do you actually do the harvesting and crushing the grapes?
So down here in Lakeridge in Claremont, Florida, we usually harvest around the first month of August. It might push a day or two each year, but it's usually that first week of August that we're picking those grapes. We're trying to harvest about 100 tons a day, and it's all a mechanical process. It's a grape harvester that actually straddles the grapevines over the row, and there are feeder bars between it that are just shaking the grapes off. They're going on a conveyor and getting filled up into 1-ton bins, which are immediately going up and getting processed. The other acreage that we have up in the Panhandle usually gets harvested a week to a week and a half after we finish at Lakeridge. So it times out. They're a little bit behind us as far as growth and whatnot, but we're still doing 100 tons a day up there. So we're getting 5 truckloads down here a day and processing them as soon as they come into the winery. During that pretty much entire month of August, 3 to 4 weeks of harvest, we're running 24 hours a day processing those grapes and making sure that they're getting cooled down once we get them off the vines, and the fermentation process starts relatively quickly once we get them off the vines.
So you're doing all of the crushing and processing at Lakeridge?
Correct. Yep. So everything, all the processing side of stuff is actually done at Lakeridge. So that's where our main bottling line is, our main processing. So every bottle that we produce between Lakeridge Winery and San Sebastian Winery is actually processed as well as bottled at Lakeridge. So it's similar wines, same wines in a lot of cases, but just different labels. And we're bottling it and then sending it over to San Sebastian as they have a limited space over there.
Right. So this is great timing because people are hearing this in July. They'll know
Right.
we're out there in August to see the grape crushing.
It's a really cool time and it's hot. I understand that. It's a tough time to come out, right? It's Central Florida in August, but it really is a cool time to come out. So we'll make sure we've got it posted on the website and our social media when we're actually harvesting to see that harvester running through the fields and have those grapes come up and actually see them in person getting processed is something that a lot of wineries don't showcase really all over the world. So it's a really cool process to be able to see them come up from the fields, get processed. You're seeing the wine come out of the presses. Essentially, it's not wine at that point. It's considered juice at that point.
Grape juice.
But it's quickly going into the tank to become wine. But it's really an outstanding process to come and witness if you can come and see the harvester run and the whole process go down. So also in August, we're going to do a harvest weekends at the winery. So it'll be a celebration of us getting the grapes off of the vine. It's a year-long process for us to get to them to that point. And we'll have a grape stomp out there every weekend, which I know is a fan favorite. We've been asked. We did it last year, but the weather wasn't very good last year, but we're really going to promote it this year and would love to see everyone out there. I've got a picture of me when I was 4 or 5 years old in a barrel doing the grape stomp at the winery, and it's nostalgic. So I might have to throw that out to social media to show people and will come see me 20 years later doing the grape stomp now. But it's really a cool thing to do. We'll do the grape stomp. We'll have some food trucks out there. We'll have live music, a full bar with all of our wine and beers and et cetera. But it'll be a great time. So we're excited to celebrate our harvest there.
Good, good. What is your daily workday like at the winery, Christian?
So it's much different than public accounting. I'll tell you that to start off. I worked in public accounting for 3 or so years. My granddad actually did it for much longer. He ended up becoming a partner of one of his CPA firms before he started the winery. So I kind of took after him to start in the accounting field, but I was spending majority of my day behind the computer. Now it's a little bit behind the computer and I'm helping out with some of the accounting stuff, but it's really a lot of hands-on. I've spent time doing pretty much everything at the winery. So a day is different every single time. I walk into the winery and depending on what's going on that day, if they need help in the vineyard, I go out there and help them observe if there's anything that they need assistance with or any training on anything like that. We've got an awesome production team that's bottling, utilizing the bottling line. We're in the process of making some upgrades there. So I've been utilized in that aspect, but a lot of just overseeing operations, walking around, seeing anything that we can change to improve our guests.
What is the distribution of your wine outside of the winery?
Yeah, so we work with a wholesale distributor that distributes our wine all over Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. So really any Publix, Walmart, Targets, any of those big grocery retailers, you're going to be able to find our wine in them. It's awesome to be able to go to the store and be able to pick up a bottle of our wine, but we also love to see people in person. We offer some great case discounts. We've got a wine of the month every month that changes. It's an increased discount on those cases of wine, but just love to see our customers in person. Even if they're not coming and wanting to do a tour, if they just want to come in and buy a case, we love seeing our customers in person and be able to talk to them and offer them anything that we've maybe got that might be coming down the pipeline that's relatively new or any new events or anything going on. It's best to find those out in person, but we love seeing our customers in person there at the winery.
Yeah. So if someone had tasted your wine who was a snob and they wanted to buy more of it and they live in Texas or California or New York, do you ship the wine?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So it honestly changes about every week. The laws. So it's actually not our laws in Florida, it's the laws within the other states. So it's constantly changing which states we can ship to and how many cases we can ship to each one. It's all on our website and we're updating that as soon as we get any new regulations. I think currently we're able to ship to 26 states, but it changes so often. But give us a call or go on our website. We keep the states that we can ship to and the amount of cases that we can updated all the time. And our same discounts are offered on our website shipments as they are if you just walk into the winery. So you're getting a 20% case discount all the time. If you're getting 1 to 2 cases, 3 cases or more, it's 25% off each case. And then if it's our wine of the month, it's 25% off that wine for a case, and then 30% if you're getting 3 or more cases. But the same discounts are offered online as they are in our storefronts. So at San Sebastian Winery or Lakeridge Winery.
Great. Let's take a short break and listen to a Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis. So if one of our listeners want to go to one of your seminars that you put on regularly, how do they make a reservation to do that?
The easiest way is to go to our website, which is www.com, or call our office at 352-500-5255.
Thanks, Dr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mike.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the village's community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
Christian, the winery, do you have any special festivals for particular types of grapes or other activities?
So we've got a couple of things in the pipeline, and one of which I have not really told anyone else about. So you all listeners are going to be the first to hear about it, and it's an exciting thing. So I obviously spoke a little bit about the Harvest Festival that we're going to have with the grape stomping, which is an awesome thing, especially to bring your kids out. It's our grandkids. It's a free thing for the grandkids and kids to do. We're going to charge.
You can take your grandkids. And,
yeah.
And you're going to let them get into a barrel and stomp grapes Lucille Ball did?
That's what, yes, sir. And I'll have to send you a picture of me doing it when I was a little kid. It's a timeless picture, but the kids love it. I know it's a bit of a weird sensation when you're getting in that and actually stepping on the grapes, but it makes for a memory. And I look back at that picture and it's a really cool experience and something that not a lot of wineries offer nowadays, but we'd love to see as many families and kids and whatnot out there. It's a really cool thing.
Do they have to put on special clothing or plastic clothing?
I would advise not to wear white. That would be my only suggestion.
Yeah, unless you're crushing a white wine, a grape.
Right. It'll likely be a mix of red and white. I'm not going to say we're going to stomp white on one day. I would just stay away from white, but it's not a super messy thing, but it's a fun activity. We will put 8 barrels up at once, but if we want to we'll do a kind of a one-off competition between a family. If it's a family of 4, see who can get the most juice out of the grapes, and the winner will get a t-shirt, or if it's a kid, they'll get a cool little trinket of some sort. But it'll be a cool family event for people to come out and experience. That's really a special time of year. It's a relief for us to get those grapes off of the vine. We worked all year to get them to where they're the perfect harvestable fruit, and so we're all having a good time and just celebrating getting them harvested and processed and in the tank to become one of the delicious wines that we produce.
I understand you're doing something like a drone show. Could you tell our listeners what that's all about?
Yes, sir. So y'all listeners will be the first to hear about this, depending on when this does get released. But it's a really cool event that hasn't really been explained to many people. So we've got some drone shows that are in the pipeline. A lot of people might not be familiar with what that is. It's essentially 600 to 800 drones that are going in the sky and putting on a crazy show, and they can animate really anything. So they're going to custom do some stuff that's more wine based and for us here at the winery. And we're going to have a couple of those beginning of fall. So we don't have the dates 100% nailed down, but they are coming. It's going to be a really cool and really large event. So we're going to have food trucks out there.
800 drones?
800 drones. And it's all done by the press of a button. It's really very impressive. But it goes up. There's music tied to it. There's narration tied to it. It's really a show in the sky that is unbeatable. And you think fireworks are cool. Wait till you see this. That's what I will have. This is going to be
after dark.
Correct. So it'll be just after dusk, and we'll do the 2 shows, but we'll have live music leading up to it and make a couple nights out of it. It'll be a really cool event. I'm extremely excited about it. The company that we've been working with is really awesome. And the shows, once we do release the dates and release everything, I'll show some pictures of shows that they've done and some shows that they've done for us that are just amazing. It's really cool.
So the crowds are in one place and the drones are over the fields of grapevines?
Correct. Yep. So the drones will be right over our grapevines and with the backdrop that we've got a lake right behind us. So they'll be right over that. If we do it around dusk, it'll be a really cool, picturesque moment. We'll have a couple different viewing areas for it, but we're extremely excited about that. It's going to be a really cool event and something that we've never done. It's something we
this year.
Correct. Early fall is what I can tell you right now. And then everything will be posted on social media or on our website as far as dates when that does get released. But we've never, unfortunately, been able to do any fireworks or any really big celebrations at the winery due to the litter that goes under the vines or anything like that. So this is a very eco-friendly change to that we're able to do and celebrate something that's over the vines and high in the sky. It's really cool. We're excited about that. So we've got that going on, and we just hired a new winemaker. So our previous winemaker was actually the first employee that was ever hired at our company. She was with us for 41 years, Jeannie Burgess. I'll have to give her a shout out. She's an amazing person, amazing winemaker, the longest employee that we've had to date. And she retired, and we have a new winemaker named Andrew Meggett. So he's actually from a larger winery out of Missouri called St. James Winery. He has a lot of experience with various wines and blends. So he is bringing in a new wine, which is a Sauvignon Blanc, which is one of the first new wines we've brought in probably 8 or 10 years. It's very asked about. It's the new wave is the Sauvignon Blanc. So he's bringing that in. It's in the tanks right now. He's blending it. Potentially by the time this podcast gets released, it'll be available, but we're very excited to offer that as something new. And he's got some other tricks up his sleeve with bringing in some different wines. We've been stagnant a little bit in the past 10 years to stick to what we've got. People love it, but it's always nice to have something that's a little bit different and a little bit one-off. So we're very excited to bring that.
It was always good. Yeah. How long do you keep the wine in the tanks?
So the majority of the wine, the stuff, so we do bring in some wines in from California and Washington. So those are going to be our Napa Valley Cabernet, our house Cabernet. We've got a Pinot Grigio and a Chardonnay, but those will stay typically in the tanks a little bit longer. Our muscadine harvests that we have, so our red and our white base, it's 3 different muscadine grapes that we grow. So it's a Noble, which is our red grape, and then a Welder and a Carlos, which is our white grapes. Those typically only stay in the tank for about a year. So we're essentially rotating it on a year basis. So this time of year up until that beginning of August, we're bottling as much as we can to pretty much empty the tanks to essentially make room for our new harvest.
Yeah, the new harvest in the same tanks.
Correct.
And you have to have time to clean the tanks in between.
Right. There's time to clean them and But we've got roughly 500,000 gallons of tank capacity at the winery, which is about 2.6 million bottles worth of capacity. But we are on pretty much a solid rotation to empty those out to make room for our harvests in August. So they usually stay in the tank for about 9 to 11 months is really the average. Sometimes we bought a little bit earlier, but as soon as we do harvest, say a red or a white wine, it's put into the tanks, it can be a finished wine in 6 to 8 weeks. That's how quick the fermentation process is with the natural sugar that's found on the muscadine grape. It makes the fermentation process very quick and very easy, which is nice for us.
Do you add extra sugar to your wines?
We add a little bit of extra sugar. So the natural sugar that's found on our muscadine grapes can usually get us to a 7 to 8% alcohol base. So essentially when you're adding sugar to a wine, it's fermenting an alcohol. So we're adding a little bit more to get the alcohol up to where it's more of a standard wine, around 11% alcohol. So we are adding a little bit. The natural sweetness from the muscadine really carries over though into the wine. It's not a ton of added sugar where it's more of a syrupy consistency. It's really the natural sugar from the muscadine that's taking over on that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Briefly, could you outline for our listeners what the winemaking process is there at Lakeridge?
Yeah, I'll go through it and I'll give you the cliff notes real quick. So we're receiving the vines they're called bare roots. So it just looks like a bare root. There's no soil that are included with the vines when we receive them. And they're 2 to 3 years old when we're receiving them. we're planting them and we're just training them up the trellis. So our goal the first year of growth is to pretty much get them to the wire and have them start covering the wire a little bit. So at 2 to 3 years old, they've still got 3 to 4 years before they put on a harvestable fruit. So really, we're looking 5 to 6 years before these vines are actually putting on a harvestable fruit. At that point, we're going to be harvesting the grapes. They're coming off of that. We're bringing them up. As soon as we're harvesting them, they're going straight into our auger, which is putting them down into a crusher to stemmer. So the white wines are going immediately into the press where they're getting pressed out into juice. The juice is going straight into the tanks. The red grapes will go actually bypass the press and they'll go into a tank where they'll sit for 3 or 4 days. So that's what's going to actually extract that red color, is them sitting on the skins of the grapes. At that point, what we perform is what we call a dig out. So it's going to go back into the presses and then we'll press the juice out and they'll go through the same process with the whites. From there, our winemaker is letting it settle for a few days to a week. And that's when we're going to perform something called racking, which is essentially removing all the impurities off of the bottom of the tank. Any sediment that's settled, anything like that, we're pulling that off. From there, she's going to start doing her additions and start fermenting from that point. So it's a relatively quick process once we get them off of the vine to start actually bottling them and producing them. So once they're fermented, they can be put in a bottle as quick as 10 to 11 weeks, but we try and keep some of it on hand to supply us the whole year. So we'll keep in the tanks as long as we can so that it's as fresh of a product as possible when they're picking it up off the shelves.
Is the winery participating in any conservation efforts?
Yeah, so it's a big thing for us is all the conservation that we try to do. So everything in the vineyard is done on a drip irrigation system. So the plants just have a couple of emitters, is what we call them, above the plant and around the roots. And it's just doing small drops of water onto them. They don't need a ton of water. They're native to the South. As I told you earlier, they were found here by the Spanish settlers in the 1560s. So they're native here. They're really bulletproof. We don't have to use any insecticides or anything like that, which we're very proud of. Yep, correct. We're using something like 1/10 of the water that we would use if there was home sites on the piece of property. So we're proud about that and consistently trying to look at ways to omit any sprays that we're doing on. We really don't spray much at all. They're very hardy and we're proud about that.
You guys harvest any of the rainwater that comes down here in this time of year?
This time of year, the past month, we haven't had much rain at all, which has been a bit of a bummer. So hopefully it picks back up. We haven't done anything with any of the rainwater, but when we do start to get quite a bit of rain, we might only cut back to water potentially once a week. And we're talking drips of water on these vines. They really don't need much, which we're very proud of. And we're not doing much to alter anything as far as spraying them or anything like that.
That's great. Christian, thanks for joining us today on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. And I'm sure you'll be seeing many of our listeners at the winery.
I hope so. I'd love to see everyone out there. So I appreciate it, Mike.
Great. Thanks.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout out for supporters Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, and major supporter Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2024, all rights reserved.